Mallory Williams LCSW say parental favoritism is a problem when it happens regularly and consists of groundless differences in treatment. The effect, I must say, is long-lasting, whether positive or negative. For someone experiencing parental favoritism, this is for you. Hello and welcome to Let's Talk. I am Olujoke Mosaku. Pastor Oyindamola Soderu is a pastor with Fountain of Life Church, Lagos, and she is here to help discuss the topic, effects of parental favoritism. Stay with us. Thank you so much, Pastor Oyindamola, for coming on the show. It's nice having you here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so what's parental favoritism?
Parental favoritism can be defined as when your child feels, for whatever reasons, rejected, feels like he or she is in competition, with his or her sibling for your attention and for your affection. And so the child perceives that there's some sort of competition and disconnect and feels that you prefer a sibling over him or her. That's usually what parental favoritism is, when a parent seems to favor a particular child or other children over another child.
Okay, so how does it affect the favored and unfavored child psychologically or otherwise?
Let me start by saying most times or very rarely does any parent set out to favor one child over the other. Sometimes it's a function of circumstances, or maybe they're totally ignorant of what they may be doing, because we find out that a parent, for example, may favor a child that's achieving a lot of milestones at the record time with great success. And then in that same family, there's a child that's not doing so well. So maybe, for example, the father celebrates the child who is doing so well in their opinion. The mother may feel the need to cover up for the child who's not doing so well. And therefore, she overcompensates by showing more affection, more attention. Or if, for example, a child is has special needs, or some health challenge, it's natural for the parent to feel, okay, well, this child is lacking in this area. Let me come in, let me offer more food, let me offer more attention, and all these things. So sometimes the parents don't set out to show favoritism or be partial to one child or the other. It's just a set of circumstances that occur or events that occur and that may go unchecked. And most times we don't even know as parents that we're guilty of these things until the children actually act out or voice their displeasure. So I don't really think parents start out to show favoritism in most cases. The effects usually are very long-reaching. Sometimes children outgrow it. Maybe it's, oh, you got this toy, I want to play with your toy the same time you are playing with it, or share your food with me. They outgrow it. They show love as much as they show the rivalry at the same time. But sometimes we find out that even in adulthood, and that's even where it's more serious, sibling rivalry grows into adulthood, and the effect is really, really bad on people's mental well-being. The psychological effect is that, like, you go into future relationships with a lot of baggage. You deal with issues of rejection, low self-esteem. You always second guess yourself, if you don't sort out these issues. And we even find out that in some cases, children transfer this to their own future children. So unconsciously, you're telling your children not to play with their cousins, not to be too close, not to, to have their guard up when they're with them. But it's really transferred from your own relationship with your sibling that hasn't been dealt with.
I was actually coming to that question to know if favoritism is a common trait that could be passed on to a child, and if so, what can parents do to avoid or rectify the damage that has been done?
Well, the first thing you need to do to rectify any damage is to identify that there's a problem. Most parents will probably still tell you that you're exaggerating your response. They will deny the fact that they favor one child over the other. I think it's important for us to establish that parents must listen to the child who feels aggrieved. Admit that there is a problem. You may not consider it as a problem, but for the child to voice it out, it's important enough to that child. Don't invalidate the feelings of the child. And we also need to be careful because some children will never talk. You would never know from their outward cues that they feel bitter, that they feel rejected, that they feel very upset. Like the example I gave of someone who probably has a sibling that needs a lot of medical attention. The child would not want to appear selfish, but the resentment will be deep down there that if you weren't sick, my parents wouldn't give you all the attention I would have my parents, and the child may just be acting out in other ways, but you will never know that the deep-rooted problem is this sibling rivalry. So parents, first of all, have to accept that there is a problem. Then you need to sit the child down and explain to the child what is going on and why it may appear as if there's favoritism. And then no matter how many children you have, you need to make time for each child. It could be 30 minutes in the day, in the daytime for one child. If the other child is more active in the night, spend time with that child. You take one child to the park this week. Next week, it's maybe a swimming outing for the other child. Let each child feel special. Create the moments for each child so that they have their own memories of their time with their parent and they don't feel like, oh, it's always been a struggle. Because I find out that most children just withdraw. They just draw a blank. And after a while, they even stop trying to get approval. And some children become overachievers because they feel, well, if I do this right, or if I try one more time, or, my parents will probably acknowledge the fact that I'm the better child, And then we need to, a trap parents fall into is comparing children. No two children are the same. You must avoid the temptation. I call it temptation to compare your children, because sometimes we feel, well, if I compare you with your brother or your sister, it may make you want to do more. More often than not, it has a very negative effect. It doesn't serve the purpose we intend for it, because all you just keep sending, the cues you keep sending, the message you keep sending down the channel is, I'm not good enough, I'm not measuring up, especially if it's in areas where that child is obviously struggling. If a child is struggling academically and you keep comparing him or her to the sibling that doesn't have the same academic challenges, you create issues. Or you compare a child who probably likes to eat well with a child who doesn't, and like, why aren't you slim like your sister? Or why aren't you, we must avoid comparing our children, because these things feed the root of bitterness. Don't compare your child even with his or her sibling. Parents who probably have one child and there's a gap before a sibling comes, you need to sit the child down from when you are expecting the new baby. Involve the child. Don't just bring a stranger home and be like, hey, meet your sibling. These are the things, they appear little, but if parents begin to pay more attention, we will deal with the root source of sibling rivalry. And nip it in the bud before it becomes a great situation that you may no longer be able to deal with, because as your children evolve, as they grow up, they learn to handle their own issues and possibly shut you out. And if they feel like you don't, you hear them, but if they feel you don't listen, after a while, they stop discussing that issue with you and they draw their conclusions that, well, mommy doesn't like me, or daddy is impatient when it comes to me, or just let my sibling ask for money. Money will surface. Let me ask. Then they begin to give me a lecture of how things are very interesting financially. It's very intricate. But as parents, we must be careful. The key to all of this is communication.
So how does it affect the relationship of the children, even in marriage? Like you said, they can also transfer that to their own children, of which I am coming to that. Somebody actually gave me a question towards that. So, but let's quickly discuss this and then we'll go further.
Well, if I grew up in a home, or if a child grows up in a home where he or she feels like, look, all my life nobody heard me, all my life my parents preferred, my sibling to me, or the language, the way children describe this thing we're talking about the most is it's not fair. If they feel they've been dealt an unfair hand, once they enter relationships, number one, they could begin to get attracted to the wrong kind of person who is always affirming them, who is giving them the love and the attention. Remember what we said, it's a cry for attention and affection from your parents. It's when you feel rejected or another sibling is preferred over you. So if somebody comes into the life of such a child and appears to be giving them attention and affection, even if it is a toxic relationship, that child would lean and towards that relationship and go into it. And of course, we all know the effects of being in toxic relationships, but it will be very, very hard for anybody to tell that person, see the red flags, because the person lived with red flags all his or her life and is finally, seeing some sort of acceptance. So that's one area people need to watch. You need to deal with the junk in the trunk. You need to deal with the baggages of your childhood. You need to sit your caregiver or parent down and say, look, this is how you made me feel. So that when you go into your relationships, into your marriage, you don't transfer, the hurt. And like I said, some of this hurt lies dormant until you enter a relationship where you see something that's like a trigger. And then you get defensive, you get aggressive because it looks like, oh, I'm revisiting my childhood. If maybe when you felt your parents were preferring your sibling over you and you complained and your parents were impatient, short-tempered, if they were like, grow up, you're thinking too much of yourself, stop acting out. If they shut you down and you enter a relationship, say your marriage, and your partner talks to you like that, it's a trigger. And then the whole cycle begins all over again. But now the difference is you're an adult. So you're able to lash out, you're able to, vent and really let people know how you feel. So, you must deal with the emotions before you enter a relationship. Or as you go on, call your partner. I'm struggling in this area. These are the areas I need you to be patient with me concerning. This is the type of language that triggers this response because of the childhood I had. Talk about it.
Thank you so much. Please, let's go on this break. And when we come back, we continue from there. So stay with us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janet Bablo, and I'm here to talk to you about a show called Let's Talk. Let's Talk is a show on DNT Work, DNTWOK on YouTube. I would like for you to, watch the show. I've been on the show. The show is educative, it's informative, it's amazing, and it's hosted by the one and only Olujoke Osako. So don't forget to hit the like button, make sure you share, and make sure you subscribe.
The program is Let's Talk on DNT Work, and if you're just joining us, the topic is effects of parental favoritism, and I have been speaking with Pastor Oyindamola Soderu. She is a pastor with Fountain of Life Church, Lagos. So let's continue on this ride. Thank you so much once again, man, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
As we move forward, like I told you before we went on that break, that somebody who is actually experiencing such a thing, something like this at the moment, or who is confused or want to know what to do to actually make her parent or see reasons with her. She says, how can a child who has an issue of favoritism try to make the parent see things from their own point of view, especially when the parents are uncivilized? In our word, she used archaic, but I would want us to use the uncivilized word, Because I think there's just this thing of, why can't you be like your brother? Why can't you be like this person? Why can't you do things the way this person is doing? You know, there's so much pressure on her.
One of the things I would advise this type of person to do, first of all, is to realize that your parents are human. And a lot of us parents never got the parenting manual. Most parents just went into it. They fell in love. They had babies. So they may not necessarily be uncivilized or archaic. They just don't know any better. So you have to cut them some slack. All right. If you have that mental attitude that my parents are possibly responding based on the ability and capacity they have, because you must remember that some of them too had emotional issues that were not resolved from their own childhood. So you must cut them some slack, first of all. Number two, you have strengths. You see, there's a sibling they keep comparing you to, maybe for academic reasons, or the sibling is more helpful at home, or the sibling visits more often. You have your unique strengths. Develop those strengths and showcase it. If, for example, you have siblings who thrive academically, but you're a child who knows how to write lovely notes, do these notes, leave them for your parents, for example. Or you know how to send text messages. Mommy, I'm thinking of you. Are you fine? You know, what you know to do it very well until it becomes so obvious that this is your strength. This is a sweetness. This is a thoughtfulness that you're bringing to the table. You see, as you begin to do that without necessarily throwing tantrums or saying, well, this is me, you find out that people are naturally drawn to you, and the comparison with your sibling will reduce. Another thing you can do is sit your parents down, not when tension is high. Just sit them down. Like I said, if you know how to write and you don't know how to articulate things because you think they will get upset, do a note. Mom, this is how I feel when, Dad, this is how I feel when. Take responsibility for how you feel. Don't say this is how you make me feel, because that may already make them defensive. So this is how I feel. Let them know. Like I said, they may not know. Then, develop your strengths. Talk about it. Another thing I need to drum into the air of youths, particularly, or people generally, is learn to laugh. Some of us take ourselves too serious. Every issue is a tissue. You pay attention to everything. You may be perceived to be overly sensitive. Just learn to laugh at things. Just ask yourself, will this thing matter so much in the next 5 hours? Will this issue be this serious in the next 5 years? Would I even remember in 5 months' time? If it's not so serious, if it's not so fundamental, learn to laugh about it. And the sibling that they're making you feel funny about, to start to talk to your sibling. This is how I feel. When mommy and daddy do this and this and this for you, this is how I feel. You'll find out that the more you're able to communicate directly with your sibling, the less pain you feel about what your parents are doing. Because sometimes the wedge is not between you and your parents per se, it's between you and the sibling that you perceive your parents prefer. But if in cases where maybe they gang up, they bully you, they body shame you, maybe they cyber bully you, whatever, if it's that serious, then you need to let your parents know. Where your parents are not really hearing you, look for someone who is like in a position of authority, someone your parents possibly would listen to and report the situation. So we're not saying suffer harm just because the issue is within the house. Please report up, get help. There will be someone your parents can listen to if they're not quite getting it the way you're trying to, project it to them. But first, talk about it, okay? And then, of course, if you know how to, pray about it.
Okay, so now do parents grow out of it? Out of this attitude, because we know that there is a difference between when parents are still very young and are coming up, and then when they are old, their approach to their children changes. at this time now they are trying to be maybe pleasing, accommodating, the table turns at the end of the day. Now, if not, what would you advise such parents to do, especially a parent who had a fair share of parental favoritism, of which you actually said something about earlier?
The older you grow, the more you learn how to find a support system for yourself. If you're not finding the necessary support you need from your parents, make sure you have friends who are wholesome and good for you, or there's support groups. Be a part of these support groups where you can feel validated, where you can feel celebrated, where you can feel whole, because sometimes, unfortunately, your parents may never change. They may never grow out of favoring one child over the other, particularly if the issue is never resolved. If, for example, they have a child who, and it's funny because most times parents tend to favor children who are not doing as well, whether health-wise, mentally, financially. So you find out that the older they grow, the more they even begin to show more attention to the child that they feel should have outgrown the nest or should have, stood on his or her own, but is not. So, in fact, it makes the child who is doing well feel like, am I invisible? Hey, can't you see me? See all my achievements. But sometimes that's just how it's going to be. So you need to learn to be whole, as it were. Find your own support system in case your parents never change, or in case things don't change with that particular sibling. I keep referring to the child maybe who has health issues. If the child doesn't outgrow the health issues, the older your parents get, the more concerned they're going to be about that child standing alone. So the more they're going to want to pour all of their resources, emotional, financial, time into that child, the older they get. You understand? So I think it's just about you learning to find your center, whether your parents change or not. But if you're expecting them all your life to possibly not favor one particular child, I don't want you to live a life of regret, and rejection. They may not change.
So in other words, this can also be transferred to grandchildren.
Oh, certainly. I said that earlier. If you don't deal with how your parents treat you, if they make you feel bitter, some people cut off their parents altogether because they feel, I don't want this negative energy transferred to my children. Or if, for example, there's a family function and all the children are there, and you perceive, grandchildren now, and you're like, why is she treating A's children better? Why is she smiling at them more? It could be your perception. It could just be your mind. But once you have that perception, chances are you want to protect your own children and build a hedge around them. So yeah, you could transfer your feelings to them, your hurt, your pain. Pain is easily transferred when it is not dealt with.
Okay, so finally, is there a way that this can be balanced because we know that it is so sure and possible that a parent will like one child than the other. But how should parents do it that it will not be too obvious? At least let them try to contain it.
Well, like I said, you need to learn to begin to celebrate each child, identify the strengths of each child and magnify it, not just to the child, magnify it to the whole family. Oh, this child is so thoughtful. This child is so sweet. When you begin to celebrate each child, chances are that each child will respect his or her sibling. They won't see the sibling as someone who is not bringing anything to the total well-being or welfare of the house. They won't see the sibling as the contributor of only negative things. So it's the responsibility of parents to celebrate each child. Then when you mediate in their affairs, number one, it's not every argument they have, as long as it's not violent, that parents should, jump into. Let them learn how to resolve conflict on their own. Let them learn how to, make peace after they've had their issues. Because once they feel, mom is mediating and then mom is not fair to me, mommy didn't even listen to me. Okay, she listened to A when it was my turn to say how the situation happened. She was like, no, I'm done. I'm tired. the child begins to feel this is not fair. What's going on here? So except it is turning violent, or they're beginning to use strong language, or they're acting out in public, just stay back and let them learn to resolve their own issues, because you may be perceived to be unfair when you're mediating, and then you end up being the enemy. You'll find out that at some time they would even gang up against you and be like, can't we have our issues without you coming in? I'm talking to my brother, I'm talking to my sister, So, and then be fair. If you get something for one where you can afford, get for all of them, Don't make it be like, oh, this needs is more pressing. A child wants a prom dress, another one wants, say, a laptop. The laptop is very important for schoolwork, but the child who also wants the prom dress needs it for her emotional, well-being. She needs it. It's just as important. So don't play one down, and where you can't afford things, don't give your children the impression that you're all, sit them down. You'll be amazed that children are super understanding. We can't afford this now. Or can we save towards this? Or can I get this at another time? It's when you don't explain things. It's when you don't communicate at their level that we complicate things. So in conclusion, my summary is still communicate.
Okay. So is that your final word, or you have a piece of advice as we round up?
Well, my piece of advice is love conquers all. Let's just love the members of our family. Love everybody as much as you can. Love every child, celebrate every child. And you, child, it's not as serious as you think it is. Learn to laugh, learn to love, learn to live.
Thank you so much, Pastor Oyinda. It's been wonderful having you on the show, and I'm glad to actually do this with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to you out there, thank you too for being part of the show. And if you're going through the same thing as what we've discussed today, I believe you've been able to get your answer from what Pastor Oyinda has just spoken about. Until next time, I remain Olujoke, but not without leaving you this word: avoid comparing a child to the other. That's for the parents. And for the child, Pastor Oyinda said, learn to laugh, learn to smile, learn to be happy. Life is not that serious or difficult. Bye.